Today, we're talking about something way bigger than just flight delays. This is the story of a moment when one of India's most powerful companies seemed to bring the government to its knees and use thousands of its own customers to do it.
It all comes down to this one number, 60%. Just think about that. That is the chunk of India's domestic airline market that is controlled by a single company, IndiGo. That's an incredible amount of dominance in an industry so vital for the entire country.
And when you see a number like that, you have to ask the big question, right? The very same question that the chaos at airports all over India forced everyone to face. What actually happens when one company gets that big? Can it just start playing by its own rules? And can it hold a whole nation hostage just to get what it wants?
To really wrap our heads around the scale of this whole standoff, we need to look at the evidence. And I'm not talking about things happening in boardrooms. I'm talking about the chaos on the ground, where tens of thousands of regular people felt the real impact.
The scenes were just unbelievable. Airports pretty much turned into these massive seas of frustrated passengers. We saw huge winding queues, terminals just overflowing with luggage, and people waiting for hours with zero information. On one day alone, over 800 flights were just canceled. This wasn't a small local glitch. This was a nationwide breakdown that left the country totally stranded.
So what on earth triggered this complete meltdown? Well, the official story was about a new set of safety rules. But as we're about to see, it became way more than that. It became a battle between government rules and one company's absolute reign over the Indian skies.
The rules at the heart of this are called FDTL norms. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it just stands for Flight Duty Time Limitations. Basically, the government brought them in to make flying safer by making sure pilots get more rest, to prevent accidents caused by fatigue. Seems like a pretty good idea, right?
So here's the main change. The old rule gave pilots 36 hours of rest a week. The new rule bumped that up to 48 continuous hours. Now that's a pretty big jump, and it meant airlines were going to need to hire more pilots to keep their schedules running.
And this is where the story gets really interesting, because these new safety rules weren't just for IndiGo. They applied to every single airline in India. So why did it feel like only IndiGo's entire operation just fell to pieces? Why were their passengers the ones stuck in this massive mess? Well, that's where things get complicated.
And this leads us to a much more serious allegation, that maybe this wasn't just an operational failure. Some people started suggesting that this was actually a calculated disruption, a power move designed to force the government to back down.
Publicly, IndiGo put on its best face. They took out full-page ads in the newspapers saying how sorry they were for the disruption and promising they were working hard to fix things. On the surface, it looked like a company just trying to cope with new regulations.
But that story fell apart, and fast. When IndiGo's CEO posted his apology on X, he got fact-checked in real time by the platform's own community note. The note pointed out that the government had told airlines about these rules all the way back in April 2019. The conclusion? This was the airline's fault, not the government's.
As people dug in, a much more cynical theory started to emerge. Here's the alleged strategy step by step. First, you tell passengers their flight's on time, so they all show up at the airport. Then, you start announcing a series of short 2-hour delays. Why? Because the rules for compensation, like food and drinks, only kick in after longer delays. The alleged goal was to get passengers so fed up that they'd cancel the flight themselves, which means the airline wouldn't have to pay out a full cash refund.
And here is, without a doubt, the wildest part of this story. While thousands of customers were stranded and the company's reputation was taking a nosedive, its stock price actually went up. It's like investors weren't punishing the chaos, they were rewarding the show of force, betting that a company controlling 60% of the market is just too big to fail.
So with the public absolutely furious and the news channels broadcasting scenes from these chaotic airports 24/7, the government, which had created the new rules in the first place, was forced to step in and try to manage the very crisis they had seemingly sparked. And they really threw everything they had at the problem. They issued what's called a show cause notice to IndiGo's CEO, basically demanding answers. They put caps on airfares to stop other airlines from jacking up prices. They ordered IndiGo to give people their money back. And they even had to launch 89 special trains just to help stranded people get home.
And just to give you a sense of how bad the price gouging was getting, check out these emergency price caps the government had to put in place. They had to manually set maximum fares because the market was just going haywire. There were reports of some tickets selling for as much as ₹1,00,000.
But here it is, the final move. After all the government actions, after all the public anger, in the face of this sustained nationwide chaos, the government blinked. They temporarily rolled back their own safety regulations. It was a high-stakes game of chicken, and the corporation refused to swerve.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why should one airline's operational chaos matter to all of us? Because this whole episode is a massive, flashing warning sign about the dangers when too much power ends up in one place.
And this isn't just about airplanes. I mean, think about it. Who provides your phone service? It's probably one of two companies. Where do you do most of your online shopping? Probably one of two platforms. And where do you order food from? Yep, one of two apps. This pattern, where a couple of giants control everything, is all around us. And the IndiGo crisis shows us the ultimate risk of that. When an entire sector gets this concentrated, the big players get powerful enough to defy rules, to inconvenience millions of people, and, when it comes down to it, to hold the entire country hostage to protect their own interests.
So, this story is about so much more than just one airline. It really leaves us with a question we should all be asking. As you go about your day, just look around. Where else in your life does this kind of hidden power exist? And what happens when the next giant decides it's their turn to flex their muscle?